Alright everyone, welcome back. It's Game 2014. That's Mobile Game Development 1 in the fall 2020 semester at George Brown. And it's week 4, part 1 of our broadcast. Probably the only part this time around. We'll see how it goes. And I want to talk about where we are. We're sitting here at week 4, and what I'm supposed to do is give you assignment 1 part 2 today. I'm not going to do that. Because I've had several requests of, Tom, we're busy working on 20 things, and can you extend us till whenever? So here's where we're at. So this week's thing, I've extended assignment 1 part 1 to Sunday. So instead of it being due Friday, I'm going to give you a couple more days to get that done and out of the way. So if you have something going on that's this week, that's again, I know there's some people were mentioning some kind of project that you had to do or something that was due the end of this week. Then you have a couple more days to get this one done. And then if I gave you assignment 1 part 2, you're probably not going to look at it anyway. So I figured I'd just wait till next week when I see you guys to give it to you, and then I'll give you until like week 7 to get it done. All right, so we'll just extend that, push it a little bit. At the same time, I've released test 1. That is a quiz that everyone must do. It's worth 10% of your final grade. It includes 30 questions, true, false, multiple choice, randomized. I've given you 30 minutes and 2 attempts, so hopefully, Kat, it will not be hard. It should be straightforward if you use the PowerPoints, and it's just an opportunity for you to go through the PowerPoints again and have those things go through your brain another time, so that way you can retain some of the information. That is the essence of why I'm doing the test, not for any other reason, not to make you crazy or to make it hard. All right, so that is the this week's activities, and we're doing more Unity UI today, a little bit more. We're going to be talking about the Unity canvas, adaptive layout, basic interactions, and we're going to talk a little bit about prefabs that you already know how to do, some of you. All right, so let's get to it. So yeah, we want to have a bunch of different kinds of layouts. A lot of times we have different screens and different screen sizes, and what we can do, all of our elements sit inside a game object called the canvas, and we're going to modify the canvas for this lab, by the way. And if you notice, lab 2, I didn't mention that, lab 2 has been released and due by the end of the week. That's Sunday again. I made it to Sunday, so that way you have plenty of time. Lab 2 was supposed to be released last week, but then we thought that, hey, you know what, I'll give you a chance not to do Lab 2 last week and do it this week. Maybe that was a bad idea. But I made Lab 2 responsive anyway, so the stuff we do today in class, if you follow along and you submit what we do today in class by the end of class, then your Lab 2 will be done. I've given it until the end of the week, just in case some of those stragglers who haven't had a chance to come to class or who have problems with their setups and take a little bit longer and can't follow along and all that kind of stuff. It'll give you a few days, kind of to submit, as opposed to making it a hard stop today, right? Just to give you guys a chance for that. All right, so what I'd like to do is for Lab 2, let's think about what this is. If you please go up to GitHub for this one. And we want to go to GitHub for George Brown. I want you to go and grab last week's, I put Lab 2A, that's for the first group. I'm going to do something different with you guys slightly, but if you guys can go up and grab this one, Game 2014, F2020 Lesson 3B from last week, I'm going to take this lab, this lesson, and modify it. We're going to have this as a starter, and we're going to come from here and make our lab. All right, so this is this one right here. Not this one. This is from the first section. It won't do you any good to submit this one.
Our own from last week, right?
We can use our own from last
week. We can use our own.
If you have your own, you can. But then you'd have to modify it, and I'd like you to make a new GitHub repo if you could, right? As long as you do that, I'm good. So separate from last week. But it's up to you. I mean, as long as I get it says Lab 2 on your GitHub repo, I'm okay, right? Okay, so. Yeah, so please download this. So if you download it like I'm doing, then you're going to get I'm just going to pull up my my downloads, and you'll see something that looks like 3B. I'm going to pull up maybe my desktop. One sec, I'm not showing it yet. Here it is. So I'm going to download this thing. And you can see that this is the thing I downloaded, 3B, which I asked you to download. Let's unzip it. So I'm going to go, now there's a thing with this. I'm going to leave it with master in there, because if I make it unzip it the way it is, it might try and override less than 3B. I don't want that. So I'm just going to go here, and I'm going to override, and it's going to go to master, and I'm going to rename the folder in a second. Okay. So we don't need this. We can get rid of it. And we can rename this. And for you guys, it's going to be called Lab 2B. You can call yours Lab 2, because you guys are doing the lab, not me. All right, so, but I'm going to work with this thing right here. So I'm going to bring up Unity Hub. And I'm going to start off that project. So I'm going to click Add. This is how you get to that. Add. I'm going to point to Lab 2B. And then click Select Folder, which is going to add Lab 2B to my options up here. Instead of me using current platform, I'm going to select Android. Okay, now you have to have Android installed for you to do this. So that's what I'm going to do when I click. I'm going to select Android and then just click onto it, which should start loading Unity 2020. Now, because a lot of you used, sorry, someone's asking what the repo is called. It is this repo. So I'll put that in the chat for you guys. This is the repo. Okay. Please download from there.
It's already in the week 3 content. It's already in the week 3 content folder.
But here, I just put it in the chat just to make it easier. Thank you. Anyways, you're going to notice my version is older than your version. You might have a version that's like 2020.14F1 or some other version later than mine. That's okay. It might ask you to upgrade to your version. It's okay to do so. You can upgrade. It's not going to break. However, going back the other way, if I was going to grab one of your files, if it's really ahead and going backwards, sometimes, the effect can be that it doesn't work at all. Okay? We've got someone else coming in. Okay, so that can work. If you're downgrading, sometimes that can cause a bit of an issue. So what's happening here? Why is it taking so long for me to load, and why is it taking so long for you to load? Because there's a couple things going on. I'm re-importing all my assets, right? And what's happening is it's going to take an additional time to do this. I'm just going to close down my thing. It's going to take additional time to do that to get to this. Now, question for you guys: do you have this view when you come up in your thing? And Daniel's asking, should we fork it? No, I don't fork it. Just download it.
Mine started with the end scene.
Could. It could also start with nothing, like this, right? If it starts like this, then what you want to do is go into Scenes and double-click on Start, because that's where we want. Okay, we want you to start in the Start scene. Okay, so again, for those people who have just come in, I'm telling you in the chat, I posted the link to GitHub. We're going to work with that GitHub repo. 3B. I want you to download the zip file. We're going to start from there. That's your starter for Lab 2, and we're going to modify Lab this thing here, and you're going to submit Lab 2 hopefully by the end of today. If not, you have until Sunday at midnight to give you lots of time to get it done. Okay, so if you don't have this scene, like I said before, and some people said they started off with a default layout. For whatever reason, they still start off with default, like something that looks like really ugly like this. You know, I don't think this is a great layout for working, like I told you before. It's up to you if you want to do that, but I recommend at least starting off with a tall layout for what we're doing. So this is the tall layout that's built in to Unity. And then after you do the tall layout, what I recommend is, because my project already has the device simulator package built into it, Unity is asking me to download 1.3. Is that right? David, I'm not sure what you mean by 1.3. Do you mean F1 2020.1 F3? Yeah. What do you have right now? You should just use that one. Okay. So if I go to Game right now it's set to free aspect, you should change game to simulator. And this will give you, well, an iPad, but it'll give you the simulator right here. Let's change from the simulator. I'm just trying to get you to build the same scene, right? So let's change the this to a Samsung Galaxy 10 Plus, S10 Plus, which is what I want to use today. And I want to pull my scene. I want to rip my scene off here, the scene tab, rip it off, and make it so that it's to the right of the simulator. It's probably the right setup. And this is how I got this. And then what you can do is you can just go to, align the view again. Let's make this a list, right? And what you can do is you can just go to your layout, and you want to save layout, and you want to call it portrait as an example. Okay. I'm just going to go back to portrait for myself. So this is what my portrait looks like. Okay. And so you should be with me by now. I agree with Kat. Use whatever you have that starts with 2020. Okay, so we're here. So what do we want to do? Our challenge today is we want to make this responsive. Let's do the next step. The next step is let's build towards the simulator. So again, I'm using Genymotion. So here's Genymotion. And Genymotion is a VirtualBox based simulator for it's a VM for Android devices. We've talked about this before. I'm going to start the Samsung Galaxy S10 simulator that I've downloaded and configured. So I'm just going to start, and I recommend you do too. Now, some people have had a lot of issues with the simulator, so they can't make the Genymotion simulator work or whatever. A couple other options that don't work for me but may work for you. Nox is another option. You can also try using BlueStacks if that works for you. And the other option that you can use is your phone. Some people actually have an Android phone, and you can use that, take a screen cap of that when you're handing your stuff in, and that works fine too. Whatever works fine for you is the way I'd like you to go. Okay, so you don't have to use Genymotion. I find that that's just an easier thing, and it works on most people's, it should work on most people's computers, right? I think it's the most compatible, let's say, depending on your situation. But I find that running things like Nox and BlueStacks, like I can't for the life of me run BlueStacks 3. That just crashed my computer. BlueStacks 4, whenever I transfer something from Unity, it goes black. I've tried, I've looked in the forums, doesn't work. Maybe it's Unity 2020 that's not compatible with it. You know, who knows? Maybe it's my video card. There's a ton of things. But I'm not going to play around if I already have something that works. And it's the same for you. Find something that works, stick to it. It's just a simulator. And the best thing is to test it on your device. That's the best option. Why? Because it's realistic. It's what we normally do. If you have devices, they're better. Okay, so we want to transfer from our Unity scene right now to make sure that it works. We're going to transfer over here to this thing. But before we do that, we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Build Settings. Under Build Settings, you're going to notice that I have my Start, Play, and End scenes like last week. It's already switched to the platform Android. I'm going to go to Player Settings, and let's change our product name from GAME2014 F2020 Lesson 3B to Lab 2. I'm going to change mine to Lab 2B because I already have a Lab 2. And you should also change further down in your other settings. You should change your package name also to something like that, like Lab 2. Okay? If you don't, and you might have the same package and program from last week, it'll just overwrite the stuff that you did last week, and maybe you don't want to do that. So you can see the differences. I notice in my build, I've made it so it uses scripting backend of IL2 CPP, a .NET 4 API compatibility with C++ compiler and release mode. It is using ARM v7, although I could switch to ARM 64 if I wanted. And this is where I am from last week. So hopefully you should have what I have. Tom, will you buy me an Android phone? It's for my student success. Yes, I would love to buy you stuff, Kat, but you know. Um, although I have to tell you that if I was going to buy anything, I might buy an iOS device. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, so now that I've done this, I want to build and run. But before I do that, can I see my device? Can I see this Android Samsung Galaxy S10 that I'm trying to, build towards? If you can't see something here, and if you press refresh and you still can't see something, you got that weird, kind of compatibility problem that Russ talked about before. The way you can fix that again is inside of Genymotion. If you click on Genymotion here and you go to settings, as an example, sometimes what has to happen is inside of your VirtualBox, this is your VirtualBox settings, and then your ADB, you should point to the custom SDK tools that point to the editor that's in for Unity. So this is my Unity's ADB tools. And we talked about this at one point earlier this semester. That might be the issue. And also, if you can't see the device, it could be because as a good example, you haven't dragged and dropped the V7 ARM translator over to it. It won't be able to connect in some way, one way or the other. But now that I've got this working and I can see my device here, and I'm talking, by the way, to help Kat and other people who are trying to catch up, do this, I'm going to click Build and Run. At this step, it's going to ask me where I want it, and I want it inside of a new folder called Builds. Again, you've seen this a few times, but we're doing it again because I think repetition is good. And I double click inside the Builds folder. I'm going to go here and put in Lab 2 instead of Android. Lab 2. So save. When I click save, it's going to try and build it to my device. So let's try this out, and we'll watch the device being built for. I want to see this happening in real time as it builds towards my device. And it's going to take a few minutes. As you can see, yours might take longer, yours might be faster than mine. If you're watching the video, fast forward, right? Because you want to make sure it's at the done state at this point. But you can see what's happening here. It's just transferring from our Unity build towards the device. By the way, this transferring process is the exact same for something like an Oculus Quest or some other Android-based VR device, right? I mean, once you connect it to your machine, it'll see it as a VR device, and then you can just transfer your application there. And speaking of Oculus Quest, I think I'm going to get the 2. I think I'm going to pre-order it. It looks pretty cheap compared to what I've seen in the past for VR. It's like under $400 Canadian to order it now, and it's got a better resolution per eye than the last version, so it's pretty cool. And 6 degrees of freedom controllers. Okay, let's get moving on this now. We're almost done. It's building the Gradle project, and it's going to push this across onto the device now. So you're going to see a screen that says Unity, and then once it loads, there's my start scene, and you should be able to do this too. I should go to start next. I go to the end scene, and I should be able to traverse back and forth. This is what I asked you to do last week. So this is what you should have this week working at this point. Does anyone have a problem with this starter project working? Or maybe you're still transferring and doing some of the other stuff that maybe my computer's a little bit faster than yours and you're waiting. So let's say check marks if you're good, X's if you're not good. I got Nate says a check mark, and David's building. Michael's waiting on the build. Jesse's done, and it's getting there. Kevin's building. Nate looks like Russ is done. In your project, Unity is not finding the Genymotion. So it's not my project right now, it's your project. And the reason why it's not finding Genymotion is because your Genymotion may not be correct, right? So, because on my project it finds Genymotion just fine, right? It's because your configuration, what you've done on your end, it may not be configured correctly. So like I said, Bruno, you can use whatever you want on your end. You can try and do it on a regular device if you have an Android phone. Most of us have Android phones and not iOS devices. You may have to change the SDK. Yeah, there's some things you have to do. And that's why I've given you guys until Sunday to get this thing done. Okay, thank you for that feedback. I'm going to start moving on. So again, we've tested everything. It looks like for most of you it works. And if you're using the same simulator as me, a Samsung Galaxy S10 or something like it, you'd be fine. So what we want to do is when we run this thing right now, even in this is the preview in the editor. If I run it in the editor, I can go from start and I can go to play, and then I can go next to end and restart, go back to play and back, and this all works. So what I want to do is in my play scene, so in here I want to put two labels, a lives label and a score label, and I want to put them in the scene. So if I have the lives label and score label in the scene, I want to see how that works and how to anchor them. Okay, so there's a couple ways to do this. Let's talk about it. So first of all, I already have label. A label that I have is the start scene label. So let's go and look in the canvas element, and let's look at the scene label. I'm going to double click there to get to the scene label, and you can see that double clicking quickly brings me there. It's like pressing F, the F key. So if I am in the scene and I press this and I press F, it'll frame select the object. Same thing with the button. I can frame select the object. It'll kind of bring it up, right? Or you can just double click. If I double click the button, it'll bring it up the same way, or double click the scene label. So I'm here inside the scene now, and I've selected the scene label, just the scene label itself. And what I want to do is I want to duplicate the scene label because it has styling and size that I want. So Control D duplicates the scene label, so I have another one. Let's rename this thing right away and call it Lives Label. Here's my Lives Label. And I want to use the control handles here by pressing the W key or the Move tool in the top left corner and move this up. What I want to do is I want to use the safe area here to position this thing. So again, I'm just going to looking on the left here. This is why the device simulator is so good. Right? I'm going to move it so it's kind of right at the top of the safe area, right here. And if you notice, like numerically, it's at a height, I'm seeing it at a height of 160. Okay? A height of 160. So, and that's fine, but it's pretty big. You can see that the start scene is like very big. I want to make it smaller, and I want to make it only on this side. Let's do a couple things. Let's change the font size to 100. Okay, so that's this one. And then I want to make what it says inside say lives. And then we'll say 99 lives. So there's our 99 lives. And I can probably afford half as much space. So our lives label right now is 1440 wide. Let's change that numerically up here to half of that. Let's say around 700. Even lower. I can probably go even higher, lower than that, like 600. There we go. That should be enough to hold my lives label. And then I'm going to use my control handles to pull it right to the edge. Okay. Cool. All right. And what I want to do is I want to duplicate this, right, and have my score label on the other side. So again, I'm using my lives label now, and I'm duplicating that. So again, clicking on my lives label and pressing Control D. I get another lives label that's kind of overlaid on top of the first one. I'm just going to rename this thing to score label. And I'm going to pull it across to the right over here, let's say, for now. And let's change this thing so it says score. And then I want it to hold 100,000. So 99. That's 100,000. Right? You can see I need more room for my score. So let's go, instead of using a width of 600, let's go with a width of, let's try 700. Okay, let's try 800. Right? That's pretty good. But you can see that still it's pretty big. Right? And by the way, you're like, why 9999? Because I don't want my layout to change when my score changes. I want my layout to stay the same. So that's why I've recommend that size. All right, so here's my lives label and my score label, but that still, they look too close together. I want some separation here on the top, so let's move it even further down. Instead of font size of 800, let's go to a font size of 80. Okay, That means I have room to spare on the left and the right. Let's make this label smaller now. So lives label, let's make that smaller. Let's go from a size of 600 to 500. And let's move that over again so it hugs the left. That looks about right there. And do the same thing for the score label. I can probably make it smaller, so instead of 800, let's see if 700 is okay. It is. And I can move that over to the right. Okay. Oops. Cool. So I've got some numbers. The numbers are based on the size of my phone, right? And this is in the start scene. I want to put these two labels, because I'm not going to have live labels and score labels in the start scene. I want them in the I want these things in the play scene. So what I want to do right now is I want to use these labels here as prefabs for now. Okay, so the way to create prefabs, and you guys should know how to do that already with Joss's help, is that I've created a prefabs folder. What I want to do is I want to grab lives and score, and I want to grab one at a time and drag it into the prefabs folder. So in my prefabs folder, grab and drag and drop my score label, and in my prefab folder, drag and drop my lives label. So there you go, lives label, score label. And now we can delete them from my scene, because I don't need them in my start scene. I just wanted to use them for sizing. That's all I wanted. So they're gone. Let's go back into my scenes, into my play scene. Save that scene, and then let's bring those labels back. Let's bring those labels back in there and see what happens. Do they retain the position? What do you think? So if I bring my label back into my canvas and my score label back into my canvas, look at that. It retains the position too. Why? Because it's a prefab. Remembers, right? And by the way, it's good to do this because then I have components that are reusable. I can always bring my lives label and my score label somewhere else. You know, this kind of stuff. So I try and prefab as many things in the scene as I can as I go. And we can always update the prefabs later. Again, think about prefabs as prototypes, or they're very similar in many ways to blueprints on the Unreal side. Same kind of analogy. They're not quite the same as blueprints. Blueprints are a lot different. But I think that's the closest that you're going to get to something in Unity. Especially if you use things like Bolt, the visual programming package you can download now for Unity. It's very similar. Okay, so you've got like lives and score, but this is great. How does it look when I run the game? So if I go to run the game here on the editor, how does it look? And we're going to see that it's okay. But what if I turn it to the left? Then, well, first of all, it's not turning, right? Why? Because my game, right? And this is the version of the thing I'm using. Notice it says landscape left and landscape right is even supported. Let's put that in. File. We're going to go to build settings. I'm going to go to player settings. And then on the right, where it's showing you all the different orientations, right? I'm only supporting portrait orientation. So if I go to resolution and presentation, you're going to see that there's only portrait that's supported. I want to support landscape right and landscape left. So I'm going to click on those two buttons here inside the player settings. Again, I got that by going to build settings, clicked on the player settings button, went to resolution and presentation, and changed those two options. So I had them clicked off last week. And if I close this up now, we should also enable them here in the device simulator. Okay. If I run it now locally in the simulator, and if I go to the left, now you're going to notice some problems. Wait, look, my lives and score went like way out here, right? Why is that? Well, they're relative to something, right? All objects inside the simulator or inside the canvas are relative to an anchor point, right? So in my canvas, here's my canvas object, right? My canvas game object. In the middle, I have lives label and score label, but my lives label and score label, their anchor point, you can see it's pointed in the middle of the screen. And that's okay when it's portrait, but when I go landscape, these things are going to be the exact same proportions off screen, right? And this is bad. We want to anchor them in a different spot. So let's go to my lives label then and go to the little rect transform next to it inside the game object. Click onto it once, and you can see that right now our anchor is in the middle. I want to go to click on the top left, so this little square right here, click on that. And now my anchor is relative to the top left corner of my screen. Hold on, David. Daniel, I'll go back in a second. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my score label. So score label, I want to do the same thing. I want to go to my rect transform, and I want to go to the top right and click that there, and then I set the anchor point to the top right. So what this means is the offset for drawing where my labels are relative to the top right corner, top left corner of the screen. Sorry, so Daniel, you said there's no landscape option in player settings. Are you using the simulator? If you're using the simulator, then you'll see it. So you have to go to game, instead of game, you'll go to simulator. You can rotate it. Great. Excellent. And then you should see this here, and the screen settings are in here too. The screen don't change. Okay, maybe you want to patch in a little, you want to show us what you mean by putting in a little image inside of the chat there, and then I can see if you do a screen cap. Or someone else can help. All right, so here we have this. Now if I do it, and if I run it, and if I rotate my screen to the left, right, you can see that now I got my lives, but wait, what's going on here? How come this one is way over here, and you know, my simulator is showing this one's okay, but the right, I mean, I'm showing I'm good. Here am I seen, and here I'm okay, but there's a problem here. What would this be? How come I'm seeing this and this is cut off over here? Is there a reason for that? Can someone help me?
It doesn't align with
it doesn't align with the safe space.
It doesn't align with the safe space. It's absolutely correct. So what's happening is the safe space is saying we're good, or is not, we're not good, because there's a camera here, right? In the actual simulator itself, there's a camera that's inside of this thing. Galaxy S10 has a camera in this position apparently, and then what would happen is your lives would be cut off by the camera or some other device. That's bad. Okay, so let's rotate back. And what does it look like if I go to the phone? So this looks okay here, and I can rotate to the left, but what about if I go to the phone? Can I build to the phone? So I'm going to go File, Build and Run. I want to build and run now. And I'm going to build this thing towards my phone and see if it's actually going to work if I push this thing to the phone. And it's going to take a second to do that again, or a few minutes, depending on your device and your speed of your machine and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully it'll be faster than me, because I've got lots going on, right? I've got Unity open, I've got OBS streaming, I've got Zoom hosting, and YouTube streaming to YouTube. So it should be at least as fast as me, hopefully. All right, so there we go. So here's my start scene. If I click start, I got my lives label and my score label. Hang on, what the heck? How come I look like this up here? Well, one thing to note is that even though Genymotion is nice, it does not take into account what it really looks like on the device. So up here, there is actually a safe area, because there is a camera in real life around here for your Samsung Galaxy S10 up here on the corner, right? So that's why it looks so further down. It's actually not like this. It's actually like, it's rounded. This doesn't look exactly like the phone. This is closer representation. Okay, what does it look like now when I turn to the left? Well, if I rotate to the left, then I'm good. But the problem with the rotation to the left again is that it's not taking into account this area, because right here on the left there's a safe area that I'm going through. So the rotation works, and it is pinned relative to the top left corner of the screen, and the screen starts, if there's no title bar, probably around right here, right? So there is this portion up here, so it is relative. It's doing what I'm telling it to do, right? But it's not exactly what I want. It's not exactly what I want. Let's rotate it back. Okay, so rotation kind of works, and we get some pretty good response. I go back and forth, and like again, even if I was to rotate it, and this is interesting. Look, my buttons are fairly in the middle. They're right, but like even this is right. But when I come back, you know, I mean, this would be cut off over here, right? So what can we do? So hopefully you're there with me. So hopefully you're at the point now where you can see this kind of rotation. We've taken care of one part of the problem. The first part of the problem was our anchors were in the wrong place. Our anchors have to be relative to the top left corner of the screen. Now, if you're making a game that's just portrait and you're never going to rotate it, even the way we had it earlier with the anchors being in the middle, would be fine. But if you want to support multiple screens and you want to be able to move your device to the left, as an example, or rotate your orientation to the left or whatever, then we need to do something different than what we've done. Let's look at other devices. So this is what it looks like with a Samsung Galaxy S10. How about, what does it look like with a Sony Xperia Z? Okay, whoa, oh man, what the heck? I mean, I pinned it to the middle, like, so what the hell? Well, Sony Xperia Z is like really small compared to Samsung Galaxy S10. What about you know, other devices like a Motorola? Let's go to Motorola Nexus 6, right? Well, that looks okay. It kind of, the layout changed a little bit. That kind of looks okay. And what about you know, the Samsung Galaxy Note 8? Okay, that's okay. And what about other devices? Let's say the OnePlus 6T. That's bad. That's broken. That half my stuff is outside here. And Razer. That looks pretty okay, and you can try different, you know, views. Here's the, how about the Lexus Nexus 4? That's an old phone. Oh wow, that's really broken on the Lexus Nexus 4, right? The LG Lexus 4. How about the and why am I doing this, guys? And here about the Google Pixel 4. Google Pixel 4 also broken, right? So not really a great, you know, kind of support that I'm giving all these other devices, and you know, I can't assume that you only have a Samsung Galaxy S10. So we need to make it more responsive than this. And part of the solution lies in the canvas. And that's part of what I'm showing here inside of my PowerPoint. So we talked about the canvas, right? Here's the canvas object. In the PowerPoint, I also talk about something else. There's something else called the canvas scalar. All right. By default, it's looking at a constant pixel size. Instead of being a constant pixel size, let's go to the canvas. And let's look at the scalar component that's built into the canvas. The canvas by default has a scalar component right here. So right now it's set to constant pixel size. Let's leave it at the Google Pixel 4 just for, you know, for view. And let's change from constant pixel size to scale with screen. Okay, wow, that looks even worse. For now, let's move back to our other phone, our Samsung Galaxy S10. Even there, we're messed up. Why? Because our reference resolution is set to 800 by 600. We need to change our reference resolution back to our base phone. If we're doing most of our testing with the Samsung Galaxy S10, let's change our resolution to 1440 by 3040. So here we're going to go 1440 and 3040. So that's our base resolution. The other thing I want to do is let's go back now to that the Google Pixel 4 for a second. Google Pixel 4 looks pretty good right now in this situation. But what happens when I change my, you know, I rotate stuff? Well, now it doesn't look good, right? Now it looks massive. And I don't want this to happen. So there's another thing you can do. On the bottom where it says match width or height in the canvas scalar, you want to change this value to like 0.5. Now it looks pretty good, my friends. Looks pretty good, right? It works on a smaller phone, a Google Pixel 4, right? Or does it even work on any phone? How about that OnePlus 6T again? Hey, we're pretty good there. And how about the Motorola? Let's go back to that Motorola Moto E, a really small phone. Kind of works on that too. Look, it just scales according to the phone. So that is pretty good, right? That's pretty good. So that is our first fix, but we're going to have other problems, right? Here it's okay, but relative to other more modern phones, we have a couple problems. One, in landscape mode, we have this buffer on the top now, right? That's a problem. And in modern phones, we have a safe area that's over here on the left, and that actually has some kind of camera, or maybe there's a camera in the middle, like for an iPhone or something. Example, if I switch to an iPhone XR, right? So let's go do that. So Apple iPhone XR, then you can see that there's this big gap right here. So that works okay for the XR, right? This would actually work. But for other phones like that Samsung Galaxy S10, that would not work. That would be the same problem that we've had before, right? But still, this problem with the head gap that we have here, or the margin that we have on the top here, is too big for landscape view. So we fixed one problem, but not the others. Let's flip it back to portrait. So portrait looks okay now, and we took care of most of the problem, like I said, by changing a couple things. So we went to the canvas scaler, changed to the option, the UA scale mode. We changed to scale with screen size. The other option you can go is constant physical size. Don't recommend that, right? And we had to put in our reference resolution. That's important. Then screen match mode, we kept it at match width or height, but we had to change the match so that it's kind of a balance between width and height. Now these options could change. For example, if your phone is always going to be in landscape mode or always going to be in portrait mode, you can swing it more towards width or more towards height. You can adjust these options so that it scales according to your most common kind of orientation. We're going to make it in the middle because in my case, I want to be able to support both resolutions. Okay. Well, we have that other problem. Okay. Now let's push this over. I want to push this over to our device to make sure that we're still good. So again, I'm going to save my scene. I'm going to say File, Build and Run. This should give you another second for people who haven't got this done. And we're not going to see a big difference here because it was made for our phone, so we should still be good. However, maybe later if I have a chance, I'm going to build another phone for you guys using a different size, and we'll see how it works from one type of phone to the other in the simulator. Let's see how that goes. Okay, are you with me? So check mark if you're with me, X if things are really going badly for you, and the Klingons are winning against the Federation.
Where was that last setting?
Where was that last setting that you changed?
Sure, let me just go back there. So I just want to test this for myself there. You can see that still works okay. Very good, but we still have this buffer up here. So where is that, you're asking? So that is, if I go to Canvas, and if I go to the right where there's Canvas Scaler, you want to change your scale change your UI scale mode to scale with screen size. But you need to put in a reference resolution of the default phone that you used. I used a Samsung Galaxy S10. If you use something else, for example, let's say it was an S7, then you're going to see that the resolution, the reference resolution, should change to reflect that here. Okay.
Oh, okay. I thought you did something.
I thought you did something for the safe space.
Not yet. And then the match width or height should be 0.5. Once you've done that, then it should support most resolutions. However, we do have a problem, and I want to mention it here. Let's keep going with different kinds of phones, and you should check out a bunch of different ones that are here, that are listed here, and other ones maybe. For example, the iPad 4, that looks pretty good, but we have a lot of space here on the top, lots and lots now, right? And here's the iPhone 6. Again, lots of space on the top. We have to adjust for that. The XS, right at the top. That's like just at the edge for that one. Google Pixel 2, lots of room, right? And we can look at a bunch of other ones. Again, you can see the safe area. I don't know why they would make all this the safe area. They should really be lower here like this. This is a cutout. So that's not great for the Huawei P20. And there's a bunch of other ones. Okay, so you can see that most of them now look fairly good. At least that it fits, right? But what we want to take care of is this other part. This other part that is not really correct for what we're doing. So let's go back to our reference phone, which is a Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. Okay, so here's what I want to do now. I want to, first of all, I want to make that change, that canvas change, to all the other scenes in my game, right? So I want to go with scale, with screen size. So I could make the canvas a prefab, but my problem with that is that my canvas is going to be different every single time, and I'd rather make the components prefabs of the canvas. So let's go change. We don't have a lot of scenes right now, and so let's go into my scenes, and I'm going to save this scene, go into my play scene, and remember 1440 by 3040, and change it, because this individual is per scene, right? So I'm going to go to my start scene, I'm going to go to my canvas, I'm going to go to scale with screen, and then it's again 1440 by 3040. I'm going to change my width or height to 0.5 and save. And let's do the same thing with my end scene. I'm just going to prepare this to make sure that I don't forget, just in case we need to go back and add other elements later, like next week. So again, I'm going to go back to scale with screen size. The reference resolution is 1440 by 3040. And my match is going to be 0.5. Save. Cool. Now I'm ready to go back to play. Here's my play scene. And I want to detect, I think it's the right thing to do is, here's what my intentions are. When I'm in rotated this way, I want my label, this lives label, to move properly in a line over here. And my other label, which is my score label, instead of it being down here, it's going to go up here. That's what I want. I can't do that just with the canvas. There's no automatic controls that allow me to do that. I have to program it, okay? So that's my intention, is to program the orientation detection and orientation change. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, in my play scene, I'm going to add in an empty element. So an empty game object. So I'm going to go right click down here on my scene. I'm going to add in an empty game object. I'm going to use this as the game controller. You guys should know about empty game objects from Joss now in his course. He's probably talked about game controller or even an empty object. Check mark for yes, you know about it, and X if you don't. Yes, I see check marks. Russ, you know about it because you're a Unity expert. So
is that this week's class?
Is that this week's class?
With Joss? I don't know. Well, you should know about empty game objects. If you don't, then you're learning it for the first time, and I'm glad to show you. So all I'm doing is making it empty. So again, all I did, Michael, was right-click here and go to Create Empty. And then I just renamed this thing to Game Controller. Now, all objects in Unity have a transform component that we talked about before. So there's a transform component. The position of my game controller doesn't matter, but what I'm going to do just for completeness is go to the little ellipses here and click Reset. This is going to reset my game controller to the 0, 0, 0 position in a scale of 1, 1, 1. Okay? And then notice that it's way down here because if you notice, this canvas is an abstraction. If I actually look at the main camera is like way down here, right? Whereas the canvas is way up here because it's an abstraction. It's not a camera space overlay. It's a screen space overlay, right? So notice if I go to canvas, canvas uses a screen space overlay. That's just the way it's rendered, right? Whereas the main camera, I could do a screen space camera, but if I did that, you would notice a lot of times, especially if I dragged and dropped my camera in there, that my UI would disappear because it's not rendering properly anymore in the device simulator. So I don't want to do this, okay? In fact, I want to move it back to screen space overlay, which is the right way to do it. Okay. So that is my my situation here. This is the way it would work. I have an empty game controller. I want to add a script, a new script called game controller. So new C# script. I'm going to make it unattached to anything right now. It's going to be called game controller. And I want to connect it to my game controller game object. So here's my game object. I want to add component, or you can drag and drop game controller and click on that. There it is, game controller, game object. Here's my game controller. I want to double click on my game controller script to bring up my default editor. Mine is Visual Studio. Yours might be Visual Studio Code or something else. It's up to you. Here's my game controller. Okay, what I want to do is I want to detect orientation changes first. So how do I do that? I'm going to do that in my update. I'm going to say if input, one day when my computer feels like giving me control again, and I'm using ReSharper, that's why it's doing this. Input dot, and I want a device orientation. If my input dot device orientation, I can try this out. I can say is equal to device orientation. By the way, it supports face up and face down, so accelerometer. Landscape left, landscape right, portrait. This out of the box, guys. I haven't done a darn thing here to set this up, right? So face up, face down, landscape left, landscape right, portrait upside down. We don't want to use that one. And unknown, all right? I could use an if statement here, but instead I'm going to use a switch case. So I'm going to go switch input dot device orientation, and there's going to be several cases. Let's talk about those. Right, so the first case is case device orientation portrait. That's the first case, I would say. And I could use case device orientation landscape left, right? And case device orientation landscape right. Finally, case device orientation unknown. We want to capture that one too. So those are different orientations. Notice I'm not capturing device upside down because I'm not allowing anyone to do that right now, right? Because I don't want to support that because it can present other issues. Like for example, the safe area being on the bottom, which can really mess up my layout. Actually, you're going to see how it messes up our layout now. All right, cool. So my portrait, my landscape left, landscape right, unknown. Can I detect this in my simulator? And I'm going to do a debug.log, and we're going to say portrait. No, default case. Sure, I can put a default case. It'd be the same as my, let's put default in there. You don't have to though. It's not going to complain too much if you don't. And I can I'll put a debug log in there too. Debug log portrait, debug log landscape left, and debug log landscape right, and a debug log, see how fast copy paste errors are, unknown. And you know what, we'll put an unknown inside of, we'll say default. Somehow, if it goes in here, it's some kind of weird error. Something else. Okay, we don't know what this one is. Maybe it's something else. Maybe I flipped the device, face down or face up. Okay, so that is a switch case. It runs every frame to detect orientation change. It's not that performant at this point. We're going to talk about later on how to think about making this better. Okay, but for now, this is okay. Okay, does this work? So let's run this thing. Go back to Unity. One thing I want to do with this one is I want to use the window, and in my layout, I haven't put out the console. Let's put the console window, and I want to put the console window down here so I can see it. And I'm going to just clear that up. All right, so I should see the console pop up down here with updates. If I see everything, it should say my hope is going to say portrait, right? So if I run this thing, then it should say portrait, and it doesn't. It says unknown. What about if I turn it? If I go to the left, does it say anything like landscape? And how about if I turn it to the right? Does it say anything? Does it respond at all? And the answer is, it does not. Why is that? Is something broken? Did I do something wrong? Actually, no, I didn't. I'm not simulating. The way that the input.device orientation works is it simulates the OS telling the device that I've rotated. There is no OS here. It's just the editor. So unless I tell the OS that it's rotated, it doesn't know. It has no idea. It does things in the device simulator, and maybe this is something they can add in later on, but the actual device itself isn't really pushing it right now for me. Maybe you have different success, but for me, today it didn't work. And I don't see that there's an option like in my simulator. If I went to Window, as an example, and I was looking for another option to have this work, as an example, I can show the device simulator if I want, but I can't really change the way this thing works, right? And even in my preferences, if I went to preferences, I haven't seen anything like that in preferences where there's an option for the device simulator so that it does simulate, whatever, turn simulation on or something. I haven't seen it. If you see it, all the power to you. Let me know about it. Then we can share it with others. But what this means to us is that we can't really simulate it here the way we want it to. So how do we do it? Well, I'm going to introduce a test button. So let's do that. So I'm going to go to the next button here. Here's my next button. I'm going to Control D. And in my next button, here's my next button. I want to rename this next button to test button. This is just a way I'm going to do it. My test button is not going to be here. It's actually going to appear in the middle of my screen. So something like here. Let's make it so that the position is 0. Okay. It's going to be slightly underneath the other buttons, and it's only going to be there when I want it to be. I can disable it later. So here, I go to my text and change the text of the button to test. Test. And because I copied the next button, I also copied the script that's attached to it, because the next button has a script, which is the next button script. Let's take the test button, that next button script off by going to the right and removing the component. And what I want to do is I want to make a new test component that we can remove. So I'm going to say create new C# script. I'm going to call it the test button behavior. Again, I can combine all this into one big script later on, and we will when it comes to optimization. So here's my test button behavior. So double click. And because I have access to the assembly, I can go into the assets inside scripts here, and I can look at a button that's already in existence. For example, something like the next button. Yes, cat, we'll take a break. Soon. And I want to grab this thing, and I'm going to copy it and go into my test button behavior and paste it in. And call this on test button press. So when I press my test button, it's not going to activate my scene, but rather it's going to change some things that are in my scene currently. And we'll stop after the test button is working, cat. Bear with me. So right now it doesn't do anything. One thing I want is a reference in my test button to my scene label. Let's do that up here. So in my test button, I want to expose. I want to use public, and I want to use TMP text. So whenever I want to reference a text mesh pro object, I need to use TMP underscore. And then my TMP text is my label. And I want to give it a label. It's going to be the scene label. Okay, so scene label is the thing that I already have in my scene. I want to make a reference to my scene label, and then when I press the button to test that the button works, I want to say my scene label dot text is equal to test, just to see that the test button works. Okay. Cool. And there's my TM Pro. And then what I want to do is I want to attach the test button script to the test button. So going back to Unity, it's all stuff you've done before, so you should be able to do this. Here's my test button itself. Let's just minimize some of these components for now. And I want to add a component to my test button called the test button behavior component. You can see that it exposes a reference to a scene label. My scene label is right here. I'm going to drag and drop it in. So now I have a reference from my scene label on the button. And inside the button component of the button, I want to remove the previous connection. So remove this, add a new one so it clears it up, and drag and drop the test button on top of itself like this. So that creates a reference to the object that has the script. In this case, it's the button itself. Where it says no function, I can change the function by going into the test button behavior and going down into on test button pressed. So this on test button pressed function connects to the on click event. So when I click the button, the on test button function works. And when that happens, it's going to trigger my play scene to change to say test. Let's see if it works. And then we'll take a short break. So going back to here, we can play. You can see it's still unknown. If I press test, then it changes the label test here. Now that I have this label changing, I can use this label as a way of detecting my orientation change in my VM, not here in my editor. Because my editor, in my VM, I can't see the console. Sure, you can see the script. So the script looks like this. It's really simple. Like super simple. All I've done is I've exposed a reference to the scene label with TMP_text. I had to use a using statement for TM Pro, Text Mesh Pro. This happened automatically for me because I'm using ReSharper C#. So when I start putting in something, it detects what it is and then kind of implements the using statement automatically. Here what I've done is I'm just using the scene label.text property and change the text property of the scene label after we get the reference to it to test when I click the button. That's how it works. Okay. So now that this is done, like I said, if you go back to Unity, you have to connect it. So the test button behavior has to be connected as a component of the test button itself. And then there'll be an empty area here where you have to make a reference to the scene label. All I've done is dragged and dropped the scene label in here to my test button. And now it works. Now I know I'm not going to need the test button all the time, but I may want to use it again. So I'm going to go to Prefabs and I'm going to drag and drop my test button in there because I may need to use something like that again. And I don't want to program that. I don't want to do all that work again. Anytime you want something that's reusable, a reusable component, make it a prefab is the rule. Okay? You can always break it or break it apart and open up the prefab later, but this is a great way of building up your assets in your game slowly by making them prefabs. Okay, before we go on, I've been asked for a break, so I'm going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll do the next video. What I want to do is when I want to modify my play scenes text, so when I go to the actual VM, it's going to show the orientation. It's going to try and detect the orientation that I currently have. I'm hoping that it's going to say portrait, and when I turn to the left, it's going to say landscape left. That's what I'm going to hope it's going to do, but we're going to do that after the break. Let's take a 10-minute break, guys. We're sitting at 1:07 right now. 10 is 10 minutes enough, Kat? You said 3 minutes. Well, let's see if we can take like 10 minutes, right, to have everyone have a chance to, hit the washroom, get some coffees, all that kind of stuff. And then I'll stop recording this right now.